What happens when a comedian, known for his warmth, humor, and everyman charm, suddenly becomes the last line of defense between one of the UK's most treasured royal traditions and a duchess determined to reclaim the spotlight she swears the world stole from her? That was the question echoing behind the velvet curtains of the Royal Variety Performance 2025, a night that was supposed to be about entertainment, royalty, and celebration. Instead, it turned into something else entirely. A moment. A confrontation so unexpected that even hardened paparazzi froze mid-flash, breath caught somewhere between shock and delight. And at the center of it all, Jason Manford and Meghan Markle, face to face, door blocked, cameras rolling, and a truth no one was prepared for. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. But before we go there, before we peel back the details that leaked in whispers, backstage tapes, and hastily edited phone footage, you have to understand how the tension leading to this moment simmered long before Meghan's car pulled up to the venue, before Jason took that now viral step forward, before the security radios exploded with the words, "unauthorized VIP attempt." The story didn't start with a blocked entrance. It started weeks earlier, with rumors so strange, so specific, that insiders thought it had to be a joke. A joke, until it wasn't. Let's begin with the night itself. The Royal Variety Performance isn't just a show. It's a global symbol, one of the last events where the monarchy's presence feels both ceremonial and intimate, bridging tradition and modern entertainment. It's where A-list stars mingle with the royal family, where comedians perform in front of kings, queens, and future heirs, where nerves, honor, and protocol collide on the grandest stage. Every seat is accounted for, every entrance choreographed, every step controlled. Nothing is improvised. Which is why, when Meghan Markle's name started circulating among the event staff hours before the doors even opened, the first reaction wasn't anger. It was confusion. Meghan? Here? Why? How? No announcement. No request. No approval. And no ticket, at least not one issued through the official channels. And yet, someone claimed she was en route. Someone else claimed she was seeking last-minute VIP clearance. Someone else insisted she was expecting to be photographed upon arrival. And someone else, this one from the technical crew, said they overheard a producer asking security whether they should prepare for a high-profile disruption. That's when the whispers began. Theories layered on theories. A PR stunt? A documentary moment? A strategic surprise appearance timed to ignite headlines in both the UK and the US press? Event staff weren't sure, but one thing they did know was this. Meghan Markle's relationship with the royal family had reached a boiling point just months before. Court documents, leaked letters, accusations of selective editing, tensions resurfacing from 2020. Royal aides were exhausted. Journalists were impatient. And the public? The public couldn't tell anymore where the line between Hollywood drama and royal protocol even existed. And that's exactly why Meghan's sudden interest in attending an event where she was neither invited nor welcomed triggered immediate concern. Jason Manford, meanwhile, had absolutely no idea any of this was brewing. He was backstage rehearsing his opening lines. Funny, light, charming. He was shaking hands with performers, checking last-minute notes with producers, making sure the show would run smoothly. Hosting the Royal Variety is an honor, one he took seriously, one he wanted to get right. But then one of the assistant producers pulled him aside, gently tugged his sleeve, and said the words that would reroute the entire night. "Jason, we may have a situation developing at the South Entrance." He laughed at first. He thought they meant a drunk fan, or paparazzi overcrowding the barriers, or maybe a celebrity arriving unannounced that needed escorting. He didn't think of Meghan at all. Why would he? She hadn't stepped foot on a UK red carpet in years. But then the assistant producer leaned in and whispered, "It's Meghan Markle." And Jason's smile slowly faded. But before we jump forward, before the car pulls up, before the headlights slice through the damp London evening, before Meghan steps out in an outfit so meticulously styled it could fuel a week's worth of tabloid speculation, we need to step back a moment. You need the context, the motive, the reason why some insiders swear Meghan wasn't just trying to attend the Royal Variety. She was trying to hijack it. In the weeks leading up to the event, rumors had surfaced that Meghan was preparing a new 2025 documentary, one allegedly focused on her return to the UK, her reclaimed identity, and her ongoing creative independence after her separation from the royal family's influence. And if those leaks were true, then one thing would be absolutely essential for that documentary: red carpet footage. UK red carpet footage. Preferably footage where Meghan appears restrained, unbothered, uninvited yet triumphant. Something that could be edited later to look like disruption, resistance, standing tall against institutional exclusion. But was that really her plan? Was she truly attempting a strategy known in Hollywood as the red carpet paparazzi bolt-on? A tactic where a celebrity, lacking official invitation or status, attempts to position themselves within proximity of bigger stars or official attendees to force headlines, pictures, and media attention? Event staff weren't sure, but paparazzi seemed strangely prepared, and that alone set off alarms. Still, the royal variety producers tried to ignore the rumors. They had a show to run. They had performers to manage, lighting cues to finalize, military protocol to follow, and royal representatives already on the premises. They did not have time for off-the-record drama. They kept their focus until a call came through on the security radio. Quiet but tense. "This is North Gate. We've been told to expect an unconfirmed VIP arrival. Name: Markle." Everything froze. "Security chief, is she authorized?" North Gate: "No record." "Security chief, is she expected?" North Gate: "No." A pause. But paparazzi are gathering. And that changed everything. Because paparazzi don't just show up for no reason, especially not for someone who isn't even on the guest list. They come when someone tips them. They come when someone wants them there. They come when the moment is planned. So the staff, already stretching their nerves thin between performers and the royal family, now had a new problem. What if Meghan really showed up? And if she did, who was going to handle it? This is where Jason Manford's name quietly entered the narrative. Not because he wanted it, not because he volunteered, but because he was the person with enough authority, enough rapport, and enough public trust to handle a situation that could otherwise erupt into full-blown chaos. But let's slow this down. Let's walk through the atmosphere as the tension built, because this isn't just about a celebrity trying to attend a show. It's about the energy of the night. The nervous buzz backstage, the anxious whispers between stage managers, the frantic checking of guest lists. The royal variety has layers of security, and each layer was now rattled by a single unexpected name. Even experienced staff who had dealt with real emergencies, fire alarms, collapsed performers, sudden royal arrivals, felt a different kind of unease this time. Because a royal scandal isn't a fire you put out once. It's a fire that keeps burning long after the smoke clears. And that's why, when a black vehicle slowly approached the side entrance, not the main one used by official guests, security scrambled. They didn't want to escalate. They didn't want drama. They just needed clarity. But the windows were tinted. The plates were private. And the driver refused to roll down the glass at first, insisting on discretion. Inside the venue, the whispers grew louder. Was it her? Was she inside that car? Was this all timed deliberately to create chaos before the royals arrived? And in the middle of all this noise stood Jason Manford, holding a microphone, dressed sharply in his hosting suit, mentally preparing for jokes, introductions, and standing ovations until the producer told him, "You're needed at the south entrance." Now, why him? Because Meghan Markle doesn't respond well to being told no. Because this wasn't an issue for security guards or interns. Because the one person who might defuse a tense moment without igniting a PR firestorm was someone like Jason. Someone likable. Someone respected. Someone who could deliver a firm message with a polite smile. But even he wasn't prepared for what he was about to walk into. Picture the scene. The dim corridor leading to the side door, the cold London air seeping in every time the entrance cracked open. Staff huddled, unsure whether to stay or scatter. Paparazzi outside adjusting their lenses, waiting to see who stepped out of the vehicle. And a quiet buzz that felt like the entire night was holding its breath. Watching. Waiting. Jason approached calmly. But the closer he got, the more he realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Calculated. A bold attempt to force entry into one of the most tightly controlled events in the UK. He reached the doorway. He saw the car. He took a step forward. And that was the moment everything shifted. That was the moment the cameras started recording, security radios crackled, and insiders whispered, "This is it. This is going to be the story of the night." But what Jason saw when the door opened fully, what he heard, what he was forced to decide in that exact instant, that would change everything. And no one saw it coming that he wasn't supposed to be a gatekeeper. He wasn't supposed to confront a duchess, block a door, or become the unexpected protector of royal protocol in front of dozens of stunned witnesses. Jason Manford woke up that morning expecting a night of laughter, applause, and scripted jokes, but destiny had other plans. And the irony of it all? The man chosen to keep the peace was a comedian famous for avoiding controversy. Yet on this night, controversy walked straight toward him wearing designer heels. Let's rewind to those early hours, long before the cameras rolled and long before the viral footage burned across the internet. Back when Jason still thought the biggest challenge of the night would be hitting the right comedic tone in front of the monarchy, funny, but respectful, playful, but polished. Hosting the royal variety performance isn't a gig comedians take lightly. It's history. It's tradition. It's a moment that lives forever in archives, documentaries, and public memory. You cannot improvise the way you might in a pub, a comedy club, or even a TV panel show. The stakes are different. The eyes watching are different. And every breath you take backstage feels weighted with the kind of pressure only a handful of entertainers ever understand. Jason spent his morning rehearsing, pacing around the rehearsal hall with coffee in hand and a stack of note cards tucked under his arm. He had rewritten the same joke 3 times, second-guessed his punchlines, tossed out one-liners he thought were too cheeky, then brought them back in again because maybe the king would actually find that funny. It was classic Jason, thoughtful, nervous in a charming way, committed to giving audiences the best version of himself. But by lunchtime, something had shifted. A producer approached him with a strange expression. Tight smile, tense eyes, as if trying to hide something without actually hiding it. She didn't say much, just a vague, "There might be a few unexpected arrivals tonight. Just a heads up." Jason brushed it off. Unexpected arrivals happen at big events. Celebrities drop in last minute. Agents negotiate surprise guest spots, and producers scramble to accommodate them. It's all part of the show business dance. But this wasn't normal, because a second producer said the same thing an hour later. Then a security coordinator repeated the warning word for word, but with an added detail that made Jason pause. High profile. Sensitive. Could require discretion. Discretion? For a surprise guest? That was unusual. He didn't press them, at least not yet. Jason had worked in entertainment long enough to know when people were tiptoeing around information. But with the Queen Consort expected to attend, tight protocol, and media coverage from every major outlet around the world, he chalked it up to the usual backstage chaos. Still, something didn't feel right. Have you ever experienced that uneasy tug in your gut, that instinctive whisper that something big is coming even before the first sign arrives? Jason felt it, and he didn't know why. At least not yet. By late afternoon, the venue buzz had changed. Performers practiced with sharper energy. Technicians double-checked equipment for the 3rd or 4th time. The security team moved differently, crisper, faster, exchanging glances that seemed loaded with unspoken meaning. Something was happening. Something everyone sensed, but no one addressed directly. And when backstage energy gets tense, the host always feels it. Jason's green room had become his sanctuary, quiet, warm, filled with comforting familiarity. His suit hung neatly on the rack. Scripts were laid out on the table. A small vase of flowers sat by the mirror, everything perfectly arranged. But even inside that calm space, the tension outside seeped through the walls. Small knocks, quiet whispers, staff members rushing past without the usual cheerful, "good luck" one-liners. 2 hours before showtime, Jason asked the assistant producer straight up, "Is someone coming tonight that I should know about?" The assistant hesitated. "Too long." "Well, we're monitoring the situation. It might not be anything. We just want you to be prepared in case." "In case what?" he asked. "In case someone tries to create a moment on the red carpet." That phrasing froze him. Create a moment. That's Hollywood language, not royal variety language. Because celebrities walk the carpet. They pose for photos. They promote their shows. But they don't create moments. That phrase belonged to influencers, reality stars, and PR-engineered narratives designed to dominate headlines. That phrase meant someone might be coming who wanted attention, uninvited attention. Jason pressed again. Are we expecting trouble? Not trouble. Just an unapproved high-profile appearance. The assistant lowered her voice. And her team can be forceful. He didn't need the name. He already knew it. Somewhere deep down, he knew exactly who was coming. But he didn't say it. And neither did she. Not yet. As the venue filled with A-list performers, orchestra members, lighting engineers, and the entourage surrounding the royal guests, Jason tried to focus on his real job. He practiced timing his monologue. He rehearsed introductions with the floor director. He exchanged jokes with dancers and checked in with musicians. He tried to keep the atmosphere light. But underneath the laughter was an undeniable nervousness. One wrong move, one misstep, one unplanned guest, and the entire event could become the headline of the year. Jason stepped out onto the stage for final tech checks. The seats were still empty, echoing his footsteps as he walked across the polished floor. If you've ever stood inside a grand theater before curtains rise, you know the feeling. It's as if the building itself is inhaling, holding its breath, waiting for life to flood in. The silence was stunning. Eerie. He tested the microphone. His voice bounced off the walls. Everything felt in place, until a security officer approached him with urgency. Mr. Manford, can I have a word? He stepped aside. The officer glanced around before speaking, as if even the empty seats were listening. We've had multiple alerts from our external team. There may be an attempt to enter through one of the non-public gates. Who? Jason asked. The officer hesitated. A tiny, polite shake of the head. She's not on the list. 2 beats of silence. Then the officer said the name. And everything clicked. Not because Jason disliked her. Not because he wished for conflict. But because he knew, no matter how politely she smiled, how gracefully she walked, how carefully she positioned herself in front of cameras, her presence here would fracture the night in half. The public would forget the performances, the dancing, the singing, the charity, the royals. The only headline would be her. But why here? Why now? Why the royal variety of all events? That question gnawed at Jason. He returned backstage with a heavy weight pressing on his chest. He knew enough about celebrity politics to understand the power of timing. Meghan Markle showing up uninvited to a televised royal event wasn't random. It wasn't spontaneous. It was strategic. And Jason didn't just sense it. He felt it deep in his bones. Minutes later, the updated briefing confirmed his fears. No invitation. No accreditation. No clearance. No approval. And yet, her arrival was now categorized as high likelihood. Security wasn't worried about violence or danger. They were worried about optics. They were worried about narrative manipulation. They were worried about a headline that would overshadow the royal family, the performers, and the event itself. At 6:17 p.m., everything escalated. A security radio crackled. South entrance. Suspicious vehicle approaching. Possible unauthorized individual. Requesting confirmation. Jason happened to be standing close enough to hear it. His stomach dropped. The assistant producer approached him again, this time with tension so palpable it vibrated in her voice. We may need you to step in, she said. Step in how? He asked. If she attempts to enter, we think you may be able to calm her down. Calm her down. Not stop her. Not block her. Calm her down. Which meant they expected her to push. Hard. Because Jason wasn't just the host. He was a respected public figure. A warm presence. Trusted. Neutral. Non-royal. Yet symbolic. Someone whose refusal would be difficult to twist into cruelty, bias, or institutional exclusion. He was the perfect shield. But the dilemma was enormous. If he confronted her too harshly, he could ignite an international backlash. If he confronted her too softly, she could slip past him into the event with cameras trailing behind her. If he refused to confront her at all, staff would have no buffer, and security stepping in would look like aggression. He had one chance to get it right. But Jason wasn't thinking of public backlash or global headlines. Not at that moment. He was thinking about the sanctity of the event, the performers who had worked tirelessly for months, the royal family preparing to enter, the thousands watching at home. He believed in the night, not the drama, and that made him the only person willing to stand between Meghan and a moment she might later twist to her advantage. But he didn't expect what came next. Because as Jason walked toward the side corridor, guided by a nervous stage manager, flanked by uneasy staff members, the atmosphere shifted from tension to dread. Footsteps echoed. Security radios grew frantic. A volunteer whispered, "She's here." Another whispered, "She's stepping out of the car." And the moment Jason reached the entrance, the door began to open, slowly, deliberately, and the silhouette standing behind it made his heart stop. What happened next would pull him straight into the center of a storm he never wanted to be part of, and turn a beloved comedian into the unexpected defender of royal tradition. But the real shock? The confrontation hadn't even begun. The true chaos was still seconds away. She didn't come for the show. She didn't come for the performers. And she definitely didn't come for the royal family. Meghan Markle's return to the United Kingdom, quiet on the surface but thunderous underneath, wasn't a coincidence, an accident, or an innocent desire to enjoy an iconic British event. No, this time, she came with intent, precision, a strategy so calculated that insiders still argue whether she was trying to make a point or make a scene. But let's start with a question that no one in the press dared to ask openly. Why did Meghan Markle suddenly fly into the UK after months, almost years, of avoiding British soil unless it benefited her narrative? Why now? Why this event? And why the royal variety performance of all nights? Those questions were already floating through the upper circles of British media long before she stepped into that car that would eventually bring her face-to-face with Jason Manford. Because Meghan's return wasn't announced. It wasn't teased. It wasn't even rumored in the usual PR circles. It slipped in through the cracks the way strategic moves do. Silently at first, then detonating once the right moment arrives. Let's slow this down and rewind to 48 hours before the royal variety performance. Because that is where whispers began. Whispers that British journalists dismissed as nonsense until they realized those whispers were coming from American sources, not UK ones. And if you follow celebrity PR, you know American leaks usually come from one of three places: a publicist, a sympathetic reporter, or someone on the celebrity's payroll. 48 hours before the royal variety performance, a Los Angeles entertainment blog posted a curious headline buried beneath celebrity gossip and award season predictions. Major Duchess appearance coming. UK red carpet rumored. It didn't say which Duchess. It didn't say which red carpet. But the comments section knew. Everyone knew. The blog was soon deleted. But screenshots survived. And then, the second sign. Paparazzi receiving anonymous messages marked UK event alert. Prepare for arrival. These alerts are sent when agencies want photographers positioned in specific places at specific times. They aren't random. They aren't speculative. They are paid or orchestrated. Where were they told to go? Multiple locations. But the biggest cluster? The area around the royal variety venue. This alone told insiders that someone was planning not just to appear, but to be seen. Seen by photographers. Seen by journalists. Seen by the world. Ask yourself, when does Meghan Markle ever make a public appearance without cameras? When does she walk onto any stage quietly? When does she appear at any event unless the optics benefit her? And then comes the biggest clue of all, the timing. Because Meghan's sudden re-entry into the British media cycle came just as several major stories were brewing behind palace walls. Stories about succession, public roles, public perception, and future royal duties. Stories that didn't include her. Stories that could overshadow anything she released in the United States. For a woman who has built her post-royal brand on visibility, activism, and independence, being pushed out of the UK conversation entirely was unacceptable. And according to multiple Hollywood analysts, the only way to reinsert herself was to appear on British soil at an event too big for the press to ignore. The Royal Variety Performance 2025 wasn't just a show. It was her stage. Or so she thought. Now, back to the days leading up to the event. Meghan didn't fly commercial. She didn't use a public airport terminal. She didn't arrive with the typical fanfare or security sweep that would accompany a former royal on official business. Her team booked a late-night private flight with no PR announcement and no coordinated greeting. She entered the UK quietly, slipping into a vehicle waiting on the tarmac. But here's where things get interesting. The car that picked her up wasn't registered under her name, her foundation's name, or her husband's name. It belonged to a private rental company with connections to a high-end media consulting firm in California. one known for crafting celebrity, spontaneous moments. Which means her arrival wasn't just hidden. It was controlled, scripted, prepared down to the smallest detail. She didn't book a hotel suite under her own identity either. Her team allegedly reserved a luxury suite under a shell company, a tactic used by celebrities who want privacy not from fans, but from the media until the exact moment they choose to be seen. So ask yourself again, if Meghan Markle wanted privacy, why choose the royal variety? Why choose a televised royal event full of photographers, reporters, and industry insiders? Why arrive unannounced? Because privacy wasn't the goal. Visibility was. Her PR cycles always have patterns if you look closely enough. She disappears when the narrative turns against her. She returns when opportunities arise to reshape public perception. And by all accounts, 2025 was the year she intended to reclaim her image. Not through Oprah interviews, not through podcasts, but through the one medium she knew still had power in Britain, the red carpet. But here's the twist that made this attempt even more calculated. Her team allegedly contacted several UK-based stylists days before her arrival. Not in a public, scheduled, celebrity fashion kind of way. Privately, urgently, with requests that felt cinematic. The brief was specific. Find a look that conveyed individuality. Find a look that symbolized strength. Find a look that would photograph while beside high-ranking royals, whether they acknowledged her or not. Why that last detail? Because Meghan didn't need to speak to a royal to cause a firestorm. She only needed to exist in the same frame. A single photo of Meghan at a royal event, even in the background, would spark debates, theories, think pieces, and social media warfare for weeks. Was she invited? Was she welcomed? Was she ignored? Was she reaching out? Was the feud ending? Was reconciliation happening? In one photo, she could reshape the narrative. And here's where things get even stranger. A Hollywood PR strategist, speaking anonymously to a U.S. outlet, admitted that Meghan's 2025 media plan reportedly involved capturing moments that could be edited into a future documentary. Authentic moments that invoke drama, tension, and royal contrast. What better moment than being denied entry to an event? What better moment than being surrounded by flashing cameras? What better moment than a confrontation with someone as beloved and trusted as Jason Manford? The strategist said one line that made everyone's jaw drop. A red carpet denial can be spun 100 different ways. Think about that. Meghan didn't have to walk the carpet. She didn't even have to get inside. She just had to show up. Even being turned away could become content. A narrative. A victim arc. A comeback story. But there was still one missing piece. Motive. Real motive. Not the media's motive. Not the fans' motive. Meghan's motive. So let's talk about the documentary rumors. For months, American outlets had been whispering about a major new Meghan-driven project set for 2025, something supposedly more raw, more authentic, more direct than anything she'd done before. A project created without British restrictions, without palace guidelines, without the constraints of royal etiquette. Insiders say the documentary was meant to be the defining counterattack, Meghan's side of the story, fully under her control, with footage gathered from real-world locations rather than studios or staged interviews. And if that rumor is true, the equation becomes clear. She needed UK footage. She needed symbolism. She needed drama. She needed unpredictability. She needed tension. She needed a moment. A royal variety appearance would have been the crown jewel. A moment of Meghan Markle, uninvited yet unstoppable. A duchess reclaiming space. At least, that's how it would have looked on camera. But that wasn't what the royal variety staff saw coming. They saw something else. Something riskier. Because from their vantage point, this wasn't a woman attending an event. This was a woman trying to force a narrative. And the moment they realized that Meghan wasn't heading to the main entrance, but to a quiet side gate used only by staff and performers, the alarm bells went from whispers to screams. She wasn't coming as a guest. She was coming as an ambush. By the time Meghan's car approached the venue, paparazzi were already shifting and adjusting their positions, waiting for the exact moment her silhouette appeared. You don't get that kind of positioning without a tip-off. And multiple photographers later confirmed someone on Meghan's team sent them the location. She wanted to be seen. No question. No doubt. But what she didn't expect. What none of her team expected. was that the person standing in her way wouldn't be a guard she could intimidate, or a volunteer she could smile past, or an overwhelmed staffer she could confuse with claims of a misunderstanding. She didn't expect Jason Manford. She didn't expect a comedian to become a wall. She didn't expect kindness to hold firm. And she certainly didn't expect someone with no royal blood, no aristocratic authority, and no political weight to stand there and say the word she wasn't used to hearing. No, but that was not even the most shocking part. Because while Meghan's reasons for showing up were bold, controversial, and arguably dangerous to the event, the real twist was still to come. The second she stepped out of that car, dressed perfectly, smiling strategically, preparing to claim her moment, a completely unexpected variable would enter the equation. Something even Meghan couldn't control. Something that would turn her plan upside down. Something that would make Jason's next decision unavoidable. And that moment was seconds away. She didn't just show up at the Royal Variety performance. She hunted her way toward it. And the hunt began long before her car pulled up to the side entrance. Long before Jason Manford stood blocking the doorway. Long before paparazzi sprinted toward the barricades as if someone had dropped a flare onto the pavement. Because Meghan Markle's attempt to enter the 2025 Royal Variety performance wasn't spontaneous. It was the final step in a calculated, frantic, behind-the-scenes scramble, one that insiders now describe as unprecedented, aggressive, and very, very deliberate. But if you want to understand how this entire situation spiraled into chaos, you must start with the first signal. A phone call that happened nearly a week before the event, in a quiet office inside the Royal Variety coordination team. A call that left a junior staffer so rattled she reportedly walked into the break room afterward and asked her coworker, "What do we do if a duchess tries to push her way in?" The coworker, confused, said, "Which duchess?" And she whispered the name. The staffer thought it was a prank. But it wasn't. Let's begin there. 6 days before the event, the Royal Variety ticketing office received a call from a woman claiming to be on behalf of the Duchess. She didn't specify which Duchess, but her tone implied they should already know. She asked about available VIP seating. The staffer politely explained that all VIP seats had been filled for months, as they always are. Special seating for the royal family had been arranged. The guest list was not only finalized, it was locked. The caller insisted. Not asked. Insisted. Check again. The Duchess is expecting to attend. Perhaps in another universe, the staffer might have panicked. But she wasn't new. She'd handled diva celebrities, angry agents, and wealthy donors who believed rules did not apply to them. She calmly reiterated that without going through the proper channels, without formal request, and without royal approval, no Duchess, no matter who she was, could simply appear on the list. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because the next day, another call came in. Then another. Then another. Each time, a different person from Meghan's wider network, stylists, PR assistants, representatives, tried a slightly different approach. "We were told a place would be held. There must be a mistake. The Duchess is planning a surprise appearance. The team wants to finalize press arrangements. We've confirmed photographers. We just need the ticket issued. The Royal Variety supports charitable causes. Surely you won't deny access to someone who champions charity work." The staffer grew uneasy. Calls like this didn't happen for other royals. Calls like this didn't happen for Hollywood stars. Calls like this didn't happen for anyone. Except Meghan. But it gets stranger. Because one of these callers used a phrase that lit up alarm bells immediately. "We need to secure proximity access." The staffer asked what that meant. The caller said it again. Proximity access. This is not a Royal Variety term. This is Hollywood language. And it has one meaning. Positioning someone close enough to major public figures for photographers to capture shared frames. Not invited frames. Not official frames. Opportunistic frames. This is the bolt-on strategy paparazzi experts talk about. The tactic Meghan has been accused of using before. Attaching yourself to the red carpet flow to guarantee photos that give the impression of status, invitation, or acceptance. You don't need an invitation if the photo makes people think you had won. And that was the moment staff realized. This wasn't about a ticket. This was about optics. By midweek, the calls escalated. A senior Royal Variety coordinator finally stepped in and said, "No more communication with that team unless they go through the palace." And that's when Meghan's people changed tactics. They stopped calling the event. They started calling people around it. Agents, stylists, publicists, even a charity liaison who had partnered with the Royal Variety years earlier. Multiple insiders later admitted the same thing. We all got calls asking if we could help with placement for Meghan. But placement for what? There was no slot, no appearance, no arrangement, no formal role. All Meghan had was a desire to be there. Or, as some claimed, a need to be filmed there. Now let's talk about something even more unusual. A freelance red carpet consultant, speaking anonymously to a UK tabloid, revealed that she received a call from someone claiming to work for Meghan's PR circle. The request? Advice on how to navigate the Royal Variety arrival lanes. Arrival lanes. That is a precise term used by photographers and event planners to identify where celebrities walk, pause, pose, and enter. It's also the term used when planning a bolt-on attempt. The consultant refused, saying she wasn't hired, wasn't interested, and didn't want involvement in anything politically messy. She hung up. 5 minutes later, they called again. New number. Same request. She blocked it. But the most shocking detail of all, someone recorded one of the calls. A staffer, young, nervous, and sensing something off, pressed record on her phone during the third or fourth call that week. She later described the moment as deeply uncomfortable. The recording allegedly contains a voice, female, American, saying, "The Duchess is expecting high-visibility placement. She's flying in for this. Just finalize the entry. We already have media coordination confirmed." If true, that means two things. Meghan's arrival was planned, and paparazzi were arranged before she even secured a ticket. But the Royal Variety team still refused to budge. Which leads us to day 3 of the ticket hunt, the day the persistence turned to pressure. This time, a caller asked to speak to the royal liaison. She was denied. She demanded anyway. The staffer stood firm. The caller ended the call with a chilling statement. "You're making this more complicated than it needs to be." That line hit the event office like ice water. Because once someone starts applying pressure, the game changes. And they weren't wrong. It was becoming complicated. Especially when a message came through the internal communication chain that someone had contacted a royal aide requesting clarification on Meghan's attendance expectations. This was the turning point. A royal aide, confused and annoyed, responded bluntly. "There are no attendance expectations. She is not invited. She is not to attend." That message was forwarded back to the Royal Variety staff. They breathed a sigh of relief. But the next morning, the panic returned. Because Meghan's team called again, not asking for a ticket, asking for the arrival procedure, meaning they believed, despite being told repeatedly, she was coming anyway. One staffer later described it like this. "It felt like we were preparing for a guest we had already told could not come. It was surreal." But while all this unfolded on the administrative side, another drama was happening behind the scenes among paparazzi agencies. 3 photographers leaked that they had received special positioning instructions for someone arriving unofficially. A 4th photographer said, "They told us to be ready for a surprise Duchess appearance. They never tell us unless someone wants that moment staged." A 5th photographer said something even more revealing. "We were warned to stay close to the side entrance. That's never used by VIP guests. So we knew it wasn't official. Side entrance, not main entrance. Not royal entrance. Side entrance. Used by staff. Used by performers. Used by production crew. Not used by duchesses. Unless the Duchess intended to enter unannounced." And then came the moment that sealed the truth. A London-based celebrity stylist posted a cryptic message on her private Instagram story. Last-minute request for an impossible outfit. Red carpet photography optimized. No official approval. Declined. She deleted the story minutes later, but not before someone screenshot it. By Wednesday night, just 4 days before the performance, everyone in the industry quietly knew. Meghan Markle was trying to force entry into the Royal Variety performance. And that's when tension hit the palace. And when tension hits the palace, everything slows down. Protocols tighten. Security stiffens. Communications become carefully measured. And whispers move like lightning behind closed doors. But the palace never issued a public statement. They didn't want to legitimize the possibility. If Meghan was really coming, they'd handle it silently. Back at the Royal Variety office, staff tried to carry on. They tried to focus on final rehearsals, ticket distribution, performer arrangements, royal seating plans. But the calls didn't stop. They kept coming. Different numbers, different voices, same demand. Until Thursday evening, the moment the staffer recording calls captured the line that made her sprint straight to her supervisor. The caller said, "We will be arriving regardless. Please ensure respectful treatment." That wasn't a question. That wasn't a request. That was a declaration. Someone was coming. Without permission. Without invitation. Without clearance. And they expected to be treated not just like a guest, but like royalty. This is the moment when the staff knew the situation had spiraled far beyond ticketing. This was now a security issue. This was now a palace-level issue. This was now a Jason Manford issue. Because if Meghan tried to enter, and if she expected special treatment, and if she intended to be filmed at the threshold of the royal variety, someone with authority, not power, but authority, would have to confront her. And there was only one person in the building who could do that without escalating into a PR explosion. The host, Jason Manford. But the irony? Jason had no idea yet. Not fully. Not deeply. Not the way staff understood it. Not the way paparazzi understood it. Not the way Meghan's team understood it. He only knew something was brewing. He didn't know that the hunt for a ticket wasn't a hunt at all. It was a siege. A strategic, multi-pronged push designed to force a scenario where saying no could be spun into a narrative later. A refusal could be edited as cruelty. Protocol could be framed as exclusion. Security could be turned into spectacle. But there was one thing Meghan's team didn't plan for. One person they didn't expect to intervene. A person who had nothing to gain from confrontation, but everything to lose if he let chaos unfold. Jason Manford. And the moment Meghan arrived at the venue, when the car rolled toward that side entrance, when paparazzi began sprinting, when staff whispered she's here, when security radios erupted with confirmation, Jason was already walking toward the door. But what he walked into was worse than anyone expected. Because while Meghan was ready for a confrontation, someone else at the event was ready for her. And that unexpected someone was about to make the entire situation explosive. The moment Meghan Markle's name hit the security radios, everything inside the royal variety venue changed. You could feel it. You could see it. The air tightened. The staff stiffened. The energy shifted from pre-show excitement to something far more serious. Something urgent. Something electric. Something that made even seasoned royal aides snap their heads up and say, "Wait, what did they just say?" Because no one expected her. No one approved her. No one invited her. And yet, she was coming. The first alert didn't arrive with drama. It came quietly, almost lazily, as if the security officer on the frequency didn't quite believe what he was saying. "Control, be advised, we've received notice of a possible VIP arrival. Name, Markle." The second the word Markle echoed through the radio speaker, three things happened at once. A security officer froze mid-step. A royal aide whipped around as if she'd been struck. And a junior staffer dropped an entire stack of programs on the floor. No one said, "Which Markle?" No one had to. There was only one Markle who would send the entire venue into panic mode. It was as if her name alone carried gravity. A weight. A force field. A signal that something unpredictable was about to crash headfirst into an evening that relied entirely on structure, timing, and flawless protocol. One royal security guard summed it up perfectly later. When the radio said Markle, we knew it wasn't going to be simple. Nothing involving her is ever simple. But it wasn't panic yet. Not full panic. Not until the follow-up message came through. Paparazzi are shifting position. This might be a real arrival. And that was the spark. Because paparazzi don't move unless they know something. And if they're moving, someone tipped them. Inside the venue, the response chain activated instantly. Security Chief Hartley, a man known for being unshakable, stern, and notoriously allergic to nonsense, put down his headset and said the words every staff member dreaded hearing that night. Code Amber. All stations. Now, Code Amber wasn't for fire. It wasn't for medical emergencies. It wasn't even for a direct threat. It was for disruption. High-profile, high-risk, high-stakes disruption involving a VIP figure who wasn't following protocol. And Meghan Markle showing up unannounced at a royal event wasn't just a disruption. It was a political earthquake. A royal aide said later. The worst scenario wasn't if she entered. It was if she was seen being denied. that could escalate globally within minutes. But they were too late. Paparazzi outside had already begun shouting questions. A black car had already slowed near the restricted gate, and inside the venue, whispers started spreading like wildfire from room to room. Is she here? She can't be here. What do we do? Does the palace know? Is this part of something bigger? Is she really trying to get inside? One performer, later interviewed anonymously, said, "You could hear it backstage, just her name rolling through the hall like a warning." And it was a warning. Because the royal family was minutes away from arriving. Dignitaries were already seated. Security corridors were locked down. The event was in its most vulnerable state. A surprise appearance from Meghan wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous. Dangerous to optics. Dangerous to protocol. Dangerous to the peace of the night. But the real chaos didn't start with the staff. It started with the royal aides. People underestimate royal aides. They imagine them as soft-spoken helpers with clipboards. But these are the individuals who have spent their careers managing the expectations, tempers, travel, and public presence of the most scrutinized people on the planet. They know crisis. They know politics. And more importantly, they know Meghan, because they've dealt with her before. One aide, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, stormed out of the royal reception prep room the moment she heard the alert. She asked the security chief directly, "Please confirm, did they say Markle?" "Yes," he replied. The aide's reaction was immediate. Her eyes widened. Her hands dropped to her sides. And she whispered, almost involuntarily, "Oh, not tonight. Not tonight. Not this event. Not in front of these royals. Not in front of this audience. Not when tensions between the palace and the Sussexes were already simmering like oil on fire." Another aide joined her and asked the most important question of the night. "Has the palace been informed yet?" Security Chief Hartley responded, "We're preparing to update them, but we need confirmation before we escalate." Then get confirmation. And that's when the real scramble began. Security officers rushed toward the surveillance room to monitor external feeds. Backstage managers whispered frantically into headsets. A communications handler stepped aside to draft a message to the palace. And the royal aides formed a tight circle, speaking quickly, sharply, professionally, because they knew what was at stake. Until this moment, the royal variety staff believed Meghan might just show up for photos. But the aides knew better. They knew her history, her patterns, her timing, her need for control over narratives. And they knew this appearance, if unmanaged, could overshadow everything. One aide said exactly what everyone else was afraid to voice. If she enters the building without clearance, it becomes a constitutional storyline, not an entertainment one. And that was the truth. This wasn't about a celebrity crashing a party. This was about a former senior royal, one who had publicly attacked the institution, entering a royal event uninvited. And there were no rules for this. No handbook. No precedent. Only chaos. Inside the head of Security Chief Hartley, calculations were firing like sparks from a severed wire. He needed to confirm Meghan's arrival, alert the palace, protect the royal family, avoid a public confrontation, prevent a media explosion, maintain event flow, respect security boundaries, and somehow coordinate all of this in under 5 minutes. But things took a turn faster than anyone predicted. A panicked voice crackled through the security radio. "Southgate. Vehicle confirmed. It's her. Repeat. It's her." The room went silent. Completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear someone inhale sharply. You could hear papers being shuffled with trembling hands. And then, she's attempting access. She's approaching the gate. Security Chief Hartley didn't hesitate. Lock the internal doors. Contain movement. Redirect staff. Royal aides started moving in fast, controlled steps toward the secure royal waiting area. Stage managers radioed performers not to approach the side corridors. Technicians were warned to stay away from certain doors. Panic surged through the lower-level staff, but none of them expected the next instruction. Security Chief Hartley turned to the assistant producer, eyes sharp. "Where is the host?" The assistant producer blinked. "Jason? He's backstage. Get him. Bring him to the south entrance. Now." She hesitated. "Are you sure? Shouldn't security handle it?" Hartley shook his head. "If we block her with security, it becomes a confrontation. If Jason speaks to her, it becomes a misunderstanding." He was right. Meghan Markle knows how to weaponize a moment. She knows how to turn cameras into shields. She knows how to spin security as aggression. But Jason Manford? Jason was neutral, untouchable, a public favorite, a friendly face, a man whose kindness made it impossible to paint him as the villain. If anyone could stop her without triggering a PR explosion, it was him. So while the royal aides were scrambling, while security was flanking the corridors, while paparazzi outside shifted like wolves catching scent, the assistant producer sprinted down the hallway, breath pounding, heart racing, to retrieve the host of the evening, who still thought the night's biggest stress was remembering the punchline about the opera singer in the second act. But Jason wasn't the only one they needed, because the palace had just been notified, and their response was immediate. A notification came through the comms channel. Her attendance is unauthorized. Do not grant entry under any circumstances. And this next line changed everything. Protect the royals' line of sight. Meaning, the royal family must not see her. The royal family must not encounter her. The royal family must not risk being photographed beside her. This wasn't just a denial. It was a royal order. Inside the venue, everything tightened. No one breathed. No one blinked. No one dared mess this up. Because if Meghan successfully walked through that door, even for 1 second, the monarchy would wake up to headlines they couldn't control. But there was still one more shock coming. A stagehand burst into the hallway, breathless, saying, "She's not alone. Someone's with her." The aides exchanged terrified glances. Who? A PR manager? A photographer? An American journalist? A documentary camera operator? Whoever it was, they weren't supposed to be there. The stakes just multiplied. And while the staff scrambled to prepare for this new variable, Meghan was stepping out of her car, smiling. Not confused, not hesitant, smiling, as if she knew something they didn't, as if she had already rehearsed the moment, as if she believed this wasn't an accident, but a victory. And when that door opened, and Jason Manford approached the threshold, and the unexpected person standing beside Meghan finally came into view, everything the staff thought they knew about the situation collapsed in an instant, because the person standing with her was the last person they expected, and their presence would make the confrontation impossible to avoid. She didn't walk in. Not yet. Not like a guest. Not like someone invited. She tried to slip in, and every step she took toward the side entrance of the Royal Variety Performance 2025 was calculated, deliberate, and, in its own audacious way, theatrical. Every eye watching her movements, staff, paparazzi, aides, felt the gravity of the moment. A former senior royal, uninvited, approaching a highly secured event. A moment that could spiral into chaos in seconds. Let's set the scene. The venue was a historic London theater, its velvet curtains and gilded balconies radiating decades of tradition. Normally, the side entrances were used by performers, staff, and occasional press with pre-approved clearance. Never by a duchess. Never by someone trying to rewrite the narrative through sheer audacity. The night's tension was palpable. The staff, performers, and security were on high alert, their focus split between coordinating the show and anticipating a disruption that could instantly dominate headlines. Outside, a sleek black vehicle approached, its tinted windows reflecting the floodlights of the security setup. Paparazzi, tipped off by anonymous sources hours earlier, had already gathered along the perimeter, cameras raised and lenses clicking in rapid succession. They didn't just want a shot. They wanted the shot, the viral image that would dominate British tabloids and American gossip blogs alike. Some photographers whispered to each other, "It's her. Get ready," while others silently adjusted their positions, anticipating the exact moment her figure would step into view. Inside, backstage staff were coordinating in hushed tones. Stagehands hovered near the entrances, ready to redirect performers or adjust lighting cues if needed. Security officers moved in measured steps, their radios transmitting updates, their eyes scanning for any anomaly. The royal aides were on edge, communicating in short, clipped sentences, making quick decisions that would affect not just the night, but the optics of the monarchy itself. The very air in the corridors felt charged with anticipation and dread. And then she emerged. Meghan Markle stepped out of the vehicle with the poise of someone who had rehearsed this exact moment countless times in her mind. Every detail of her appearance, her attire, her hair, her jewelry, was curated for maximum visual impact. She wore an outfit that signaled strength, independence, and glamour simultaneously, designed to stand out in photographs without appearing brash. Her heels clicked on the pavement with a rhythm that demanded attention. A subtle smile played across her face, calculated to convey confidence yet approachability, authority yet charm. The paparazzi erupted instantly, their cameras clicking and flashing as she moved toward the side entrance. Their shouts of her name and the sound of rolling camera wheels created a chaotic symphony, a mix of chaos and excitement that mirrored the tension inside the theater. Meghan's team, composed of stylists, aides, and security detail, flanked her strategically, ensuring that she maintained a controlled path through the gathering crowd, poised to step through the threshold into a world she wasn't officially part of. Back inside, Jason Manford approached the entrance from the opposite direction. His rehearsed smiles and friendly demeanor now served a different purpose: gatekeeper, protector, moderator. His footsteps were measured, his posture authoritative yet calm. He had been briefed, yes, but nothing could fully prepare him for what he was about to face. Meghan wasn't just approaching a door. She was approaching a moment that could define the evening, the media narrative, and potentially her ongoing public image. And the responsibility of handling it fell entirely on him. As he reached the doorway, security officers and stagehands subtly formed a perimeter around the entry point, creating a buffer that would prevent unauthorized access without appearing confrontational. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Every heartbeat seemed amplified. Every camera click outside seemed to echo in the halls. And through it all, Meghan continued to advance, a deliberate predator in heels, eyes forward, poised to claim a space she had no official right to occupy. And then the first verbal confrontation happened, quiet, controlled, almost invisible to the cameras outside, yet searing in intensity. A staff member, stepping in front of the car, gently but firmly requested credentials. Meghan's team attempted to deflect, citing prior communication, media presence, and what they called standard VIP protocols. But the staffer remained resolute, repeating the phrase, "No access without approval." The tension escalated incrementally, subtle yet explosive, like a match being held over a powder keg. Jason positioned himself strategically between the side entrance and the arriving party. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture aggressively. His presence alone created a physical and psychological barrier. Meghan, accustomed to using charm, influence, and media manipulation to achieve her goals, now faced someone whose authority derived not from power or title, but from credibility, professionalism, and the rare quality of being universally respected by both staff and public. The photographers outside could see the tension unfolding. Some snapped pictures, others filmed short clips. The flashes created disorienting lights that reflected off her jewelry and the polished floors, turning the moment into a visual spectacle even before words were exchanged. Meghan maintained composure, adjusting her stance subtly, smiling, yet scanning her options, ways to negotiate, ways to circumvent, ways to achieve entry without confrontation. But every path forward was blocked. By protocol, by staff, and now by Jason. A junior aide, observing from behind a pillar, later described the moment as surreal. It was like watching a chess match, but every piece had the ability to go rogue. You could feel that if one step was miscalculated, the entire night could spiral into headlines before anyone even realized what happened. Indeed, the stakes were extraordinary. Not only was the Royal Variety performance one of the year's most prestigious entertainment events, but the royals themselves were scheduled to arrive within the next 10 minutes. Any public confrontation at the side entrance could have been captured, broadcast, and misrepresented within seconds on social media. The palace's messaging team would have been forced into damage control immediately, dealing with optics rather than the intended celebration. Then came the audacious move. Meghan attempted to position herself strategically alongside one of the side corridor walls, attempting what insiders now refer to as the paparazzi bolt-on, a tactic designed to ensure that, even if she could not enter, cameras would frame her as part of the event's immediate visual narrative. It was subtle, seemingly innocuous to the untrained eye, but the staff recognized the maneuver instantly. They tightened the perimeter, forming an invisible but effective barrier. Jason mirrored the movement, subtly guiding her back, maintaining a balance between politeness and immovable firmness. And just as the tension reached a palpable peak, a security officer whispered into Jason's earpiece, eyes darting toward the shadows. Her team is coordinating with photographers. They're trying to engineer coverage regardless of protocol. Jason took a deep breath. One step closer to her, one foot planted in professional authority, and he said something quietly but firmly. Words that would later be quoted extensively in eyewitness accounts. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you through." The brief pause that followed was electric. Meghan's eyes flickered slightly. Not anger, not confusion, but a calculated assessment of her options. She was used to having obstacles removed, not reinforced. And she was immediately assessing whether a confrontation could be spun in her favor, whether cameras outside could capture defiance, whether she could subtly manipulate a narrative while still adhering to her polished composure. The assistant producer backstage, observing through security monitors, leaned toward a stagehand and muttered, "I don't think she's ever been blocked like this before."